Welcome back to Freedom to Learn podcast. My name is Gurumurthy Yeleswarapu, founder and CEO of Siliconvalley4u. For those who are not familiar with this podcast, please subscribe and press the like button. You'll get a lot of episodes your way, and also you can dig into our archives and enjoy the podcast. So today I have a special guest, because the reason I say special, because we share the same last name, although we never met in India. And we both come from India, but we never met in India. So I always used to think my last name is very unique. Apparently not. So he's doing a lot of good things for the youth, so basically at the moment he's the senior vice president, Indegene, the company Indegene in New Jersey, and also he's on the advisory board for multiple companies, and he's predominantly expert in life sciences, and he comes from IIT Madras. His bachelor's is from IIT Madras, and so he's been here for some time, many years, and he's going to share his journey and the community services he's doing for youth, and more importantly, how and what changed since he left his education back in India. So welcome, Ram.
Thank you, Guru. Thank you so much. Good morning to you.
Yeah. So for starters, why don't you tell us about yourself? How you started, in India, and then what brings you to US, and then your journey in US, and you've been entrepreneur. You founded companies, and now you're at Indegene in the life sciences vertical. So why don't you share your background, and then we go from there.
Certainly, Guru. Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction. So my name is Ram Yeleswarapu. Clearly, I think with the solid schooling, if you will, and going to college in India, was certainly blessed, if you will, to have gotten a chance to study or do my bachelor's at IIT Madras. So the entire journey from school to college, gave me fundamentally, a very rich experience, if you will, working and studying alongside, of course, students from across the country. At IIT Madras is where I kind of was almost determined that my life or my career would be shaped by entrepreneurship. So I always had a passion to kind of do something, create, if you will, something of value, and so on and so forth. So that early seeding, if you will, of the thoughts of entrepreneurship led me to, perhaps as an entrepreneur, as they say, to take a risk, if you will. So post graduation from IIT Madras, I got a job with the Tatas. And so it was a phenomenal experience. Again, I cherish when I look back at the experience of working with the Tatas, learned numerous things as well in terms of culture, employer-employee relationships, and so on and so forth. But the aspect of entrepreneurship, the desire to take a risk, if you will, caused me to move away from a very well-set job, if you will, and move on and join a company out of Bombay, Mumbai. And then eventually came into the US in early 90s, 1993 to be precise, on an H-1B work permit. And I think that journey was phenomenal. Moved around a little bit on the job with the employer for a little bit. And as I got my green card a couple of years down the road, I think I got to realize my aspirations to be an entrepreneur. I set up my own company and I started doing independent consulting. So fortunately, when I look back, that entire switch to setting up my company, that experience, and the switch over to pharma and healthcare began right about the same time. So although I'm an engineer by educational qualifications, the switch to pharma came on the back of an opportunity. And there's no looking back since then. I've continued my trajectory with healthcare licenses companies. And here I'm at Indegene, trying to construct Indegene Clinical, which is all about clinical trials, clinical research, getting drugs to safe and effective therapies to market, and also supporting these things in a post-launch phase.
Fantastic. So I just learned one more thing. It's not only our last name. I also came here in 93. So 93, October 4th. I don't know. Just don't tell me that you also landed on the same day. So, so anyway, so yeah. And so So now that you have seen the industry in India, both in India and US, so so can you talk about the industry evolved so much? Our world has evolved so much, and we've been talking yesterday also, right? People are talking about Instagram, TikTok, this, that. Everything has evolved. So much has changed since our days. Now here we are, and looking at things completely through a different lens. But my take is that colleges and education system hasn't changed that much. So what's your take on that?
Guru, it's a great question, right? So when I look back, for example, the generation of our parents to who we are and how we shaped ourselves to the kind of advice and messaging we are giving to our children, and of course the subsequent generations, I think it's a rapid evolution, if you ask me. I think gone are the days where I clearly remember growing up that we were three brothers, and it almost became like, although when I look back now, I say, oh, I mean, how did this ever cast itself into be a storyline like this? My elder brother is a doctor, and I became an engineer, and my younger brother is a cost and a chartered accountant. So it's almost like a parent saying, hey, you all need to branch off, pick different things. But if I look back at the time when we were going through some of that to what our children, having grown up in the US, have gone through, and now I would say even the generations in India, for example, it's a world of opportunity out there. I think
Okay.
everybody realizes that you do not need to get stereotyped or pushed into a certain bucket or another. The world of opportunity is just fantastic. It's vast, and it's all a matter of picking up the right skills. And I think skill building is becoming earlier and is beginning earlier and earlier, if you ask me. The kids of this generation, or even the previous ones, for example, are precautious. They're amazingly adept at absorbing. They're amazingly adept at the digital transformation that's happening around us. And regardless of the vertical industry, I think the same concepts of data and digital are pervading, if you will, all around us. So I would say the world has moved on rapidly. The evolution of technology, the upkeep of the younger and younger generation now with the advances in technology enables this generation, or I would say even the previous ones, for example, to adapt themselves much faster to the changes around us. That's my belief in how quickly the world around has kind of has evolved, and the opportunity just becomes is quite global, and it's quite dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. The global is the keyword, definitely, as you know very well. When you left India, I guess if you talk about high tech, there were about 4 or 5 companies. Now there, I don't know, like hundreds and thousands of companies in India, and also opportunities globally, and also this with this remote working option, people can potentially work for anyone from anywhere. So there is a huge change. But that is a segue into my next question is, you said that skill development, right? So predominantly schools have been, and even today, is focusing on what? Okay, physics, math, chemistry in our case, and biology, maybe your case, and then some other history, geography, this, that. But there's never mention of, or not much of it, why and how, and then more importantly, why. And so that is this, and also does it resonate with you? In other words, there are so many physics is there, and does it um, fit into your interests and abilities? And also education system is not, I think it's not giving that opportunity for the self-discovery process, opportunity and time, saying, okay, all these are out there. Am I going to be, how do I know that I'm going to fit into any of these or some of these? So, and there is no process where, these guys get an opportunity to learn to be that. So in our case, I can speak for myself, most probably that may be the case with you. So as I think you also mentioned, we got here, we kind of just, traveled around with the companies, and companies, for my case, they put me on mainframes. Did I want to do mainframes? I don't know. And I just did whatever they asked me to do because I was on H1B, just like you did, and I had to do whatever they asked me to do. So in other words, companies kind of decide my career. they kind of, they put me on a path rather than me having to choose those paths. And, or at least I didn't have a say, let alone deciding and thinking through. So as you said, now things are so different, and there's there's a digital evolution has gave them a lot of opportunities. We are talking like this, they have everything in front of them. If you have computer, you have most of the stuff in front of you to build your career, if you can penetrate through all the options, or if you can find the optimal path. So my question to you is, I always say that there is a huge gap between academics and the real world because of the very thing I just mentioned, that the skill development doesn't teach you anything besides what. And so if there is a, do you agree with the gap? And if you do, what are your thoughts? You can speak for life sciences if you want, or technology, to mitigate that gap for the youth.
So, Guru, it's a phenomenal question. Let me start with that. I do believe and I agree with you 100% that the readiness of talent and their ability to adapt itself to what the real world industry demands now, that can only be bridged by being practical. What do I mean by that? I think, in my opinion at least, right, and it's easier for me to kind of talk about my own example. I switched, as I mentioned to you, having studied material sciences and engineering in my bachelor's, and then the ability to switch over to the pharmaceutical healthcare space, for example, right, starting from the mid 90s on the back of an opportunity, has kind of now enabled me to entrench myself firmly in the space of healthcare and life sciences. This has become a passion. Are my educational qualifications aligned to what the industry requirements are? No. In looking back, I always now feel, for example, I should have gone and studied medicine perhaps.
Yeah.
Had I done that, and had I discovered that my passion was eventually in my career, obviously, who knew at that time? But had I known it, I think I could have contributed more, is my belief. But the fact is, I spent, let's say, so many years of my life, early stage, going through engineering and all of the fundamentals and switching over, right? Today has given me at least the ability to talk about the language of healthcare life sciences a bit better, right? That does not make me an expert by any means, but I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by people who are the experts. So my entire point is, the vertical understanding of a subject matter is vital, number one. You need to couple it with a set of horizontal skills.
Yeah.
Those skills are vital. So what I firmly believe is the IIT Madras experience gave me a lot of horizontal skills, right? I could not leverage the vertical skill that I picked up on campus, but fortunate enough to have switched over to healthcare life sciences, which kind of became a passion. So by studying, by coming up to speed, spending time with people, I think I'm fortunate enough now that I can never ever conceive of moving away from this field, for example. That's my belief. Now let me switch over quickly to my kids, for example, and that generation. Very quickly, I think it's the same message that we administer to them. Pick up a vertical depth of knowledge in a given subject and then go horizontal with a set of skills. I think that kind of has worked wonderfully well, right? So they're firmly entrenched now, and they're kind of combining these kinds of skills to do all that. So it comes back to the point you were making, which is, I don't believe that all of what we go through the educational grind, number one, followed by, in fact, interestingly enough, I was listening to a podcast just yesterday, and the debate was about SATs, the relevance of SATs, for example, right? Versus the profile building of a child or a student through all of their high school tenure, followed by getting tested on SATs, for example, which is just a one-off thing that everybody clamors towards preparations and so on and so forth. On a good day, you may end up doing very well and you score very well. On a not so good day, perhaps the scores get subdued. But that becomes a measure or a yardstick for how colleges kind of look at the profile of an individual and then make their selections. My point is, I think there's so much more than simply getting tested on an SAT. So agree with you overwhelmingly that it should be a 360-degree profile of a student, looking back all aspects of it, vertical and horizontal skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you put very, very nicely, succinctly, the vertical and horizontal, right? So I would say, at least, from my view, first half of your education up to, let's say here, lower middle school, and focus should be only on horizontal skills. Every subject, whatever is out there, sports, music, anything and everything. So once you are like upper middle school or even high school, let's say high school onwards, the approach of identifying the verticals and build those horizontal skills accordingly, rather than just blindly, with lack of better term, blindly, because you don't know that you never had an opportunity to do that discovery process. Once you do, so let's say take my case, when I completed my computer science, the college told me that this guy is eligible for only software development or some kind of a software job. And industry tells me, I'm not going to even talk to you about anything else, period. This is it. Your college told me, this is the certificate you have. This is the only thing you know. You don't know anything else. If I say product management, let's say healthcare or financial, forget about it. So they just don't, they didn't even entertain the conversation. They said, come and do some coding, period. So just because I did computer science, because you know why we did computer science back then, that was even horrible. We had only one option, right? Why did I do computer science? Because I got that seat, and that's it. There's nothing like I wanted to do. So, but anyway, even now, just because you did, certain degree, it doesn't automatically should put you in that stereotype that you cannot even try other things. Because fast forward, many, you included, tons and tons, a lot of people, they have done certain degrees, they are doing completely different, they are into completely different professions. I know people, MBAs, they are doing coding. People like who did computer science like me, no longer coding anymore. Point is that my ex-boss, he did MIT PhD in computer science, and then first job was PLM, and then he's doing very well right now. Point is that I find it, once I just had a conversation with him. So what made you to not pick some technology job right after your PhD, and you invested so much time? And then he jokingly said, I realized that I'm not fit for tech after spending so long. I mean, that's the realization I came to, and then I had to get into the business side of things. Point is that I think he realized that this is what he wants to do, I guess, and then why would he choose otherwise? Point is, if there is a self-discovery process in coupled with, hopefully they identify the vertical and then they build the horizontal skills, like you said, that's 360 degrees profile. And if you get SAT, great. If you don't, that shouldn't be the end of the world, in my opinion. You're absolutely right that on a bad day, you got 4 or 5 questions wrong, you are on the other side of the spectrum in terms of your scores and everything. That shouldn't put you on the wrong trajectory for your college career, which is, I think, is clearly wrong. But I guess typically what we preach to students is, don't worry about what it is, worry about you, what you can do to elevate yourself and figure out your pathway, rather than relying on them or worrying about or criticizing them. It doesn't do any good. And that's where Siliconvalley4u is coming into picture, where we are kind of telling both parents and students that look at this in a wider perspective than just literally looking at some grades and scores, irrespective of if a student is doing well or not. In both the cases, be conscious about other skills that are needed, so that when they get out of the school, they don't lose precious time, like you and I lost probably precious time of your youth to build your career quickly and put yourself in a different league, rather than just doing trial and error and see what happens. And then by the time you figure out your niche, it could be too late in some cases. So that's what we are, I think, at least we are trying to do with schools and colleges around the world to sort of mitigate that gap. I don't think we can completely eliminate the gap. I don't see that happening anytime soon. That's my opinion, at least. So with that, so now let's talk about your contributions. I know you and your wife are both are involved in Balaji Temple in Bridgewater, New Jersey. So you guys are part of the leadership to help youth. And so I just literally copied this quote from your website. Let's harness the energy, intellect, and power of our youth for a better tomorrow. So, I mean, I really like that line. So that's it. That I was just a minute ago. That's what exactly what I was saying that that's the time they have best time of their lives. They have energy, they have intellect, enthusiasm, everything. So please talk about your mission and your passion behind this.
Sure, Guru. So before I go there, very quickly, I think I like the vision and the mission with which Silicon Valley4u has been progressing down this path of building up the so-called that we just discussed, the 360-degree profile, and giving students a chance to discover what's their undertaking, if you will,
Yeah,
the large undertaking in life. I think that's just such a valuable thing. And you're right, it's going to take time. Obviously, there is a set process, and you need to kind of keep contributing towards and building and nurturing these profile building along the way. Now, quickly switching over to the Bridgewater Temple, to your point, my wife and I again have been associated with the Sri Venkateshwara Temple, as it's also called, in Bridgewater, New Jersey, for a long time. We're truly blessed to be a part of and having been given an opportunity to work with youth. So that kind of gives us an even greater chance to perhaps impact the lives of such young folks, right, to the extent we can. So my wife is a member of the board of trustees at the temple, and she has been volunteering for, I would say, north of 15 years, perhaps,
wow.
in various different committees and so on and so forth. But that's a passion that I got inducted into. As an entrepreneur, I barely used to have time with a lot of travel on my plate. But as I started finding time on a given weekend, I would actually be with her at the temple. And both of us were given a chance by the board to kind of lead the youth committee, if you will. So between myself and her now at the helm of, as a chairperson, my wife is Sunita Yeleswarapu, and she's the chairperson of the youth committee. And so the two of us get a chance to actually kind of start figuring it out as to what did we inherit, and have we come at least a distance forward from where we were handed off the reins, if you will, of the so-called youth group and committee. And the answer is yes. Could we have done more? Could we do more? Absolutely. There's tremendous potential. So we're fortunate that the temple and the board have created such a wonderful platform for the community. And so we have access to infrastructure, the platform, and so on and so forth. It's a non-profit organization, all right. But the platform is powerful. So what have we done as we look back? Today, we have a little over 1,000 registered youth in our database. We started with very meager numbers several years ago, and it's scaling now. So the word is spreading, this message spreads quite quickly. So again, very fortunate. We built a nice registered database, if you will, of over 1,000. Bulk of these are all high school kids. It starts off as young as 7th or 8th graders, and they kind of go on through the 12th grade, and then they drop off for obvious reasons. There's a disconnect as they drop off and move to colleges. Then college life takes precedence over, and obviously their priorities after that. But we have been creating a number of volunteer opportunities for these youth to come on in and tell them as to what it takes to do community service, right? To come into the temple, to understand, a little bit more about the culture, the religion, how to help someone in need, if you will. Those aspects, I think the temple's absolutely inculcating in these youth that are coming in. And we're truly thankful to each of these youth who kind of take time off of their weekdays and weekends to come in and help us. So A, it's that. Two, I think there's also an aspect of religious and cultural education, Guru, that we've been trying to create these lessons around reciting, chanting shlokas, how to pronounce these things appropriately enough. So little things that we can do once in a while. Because of the temple being a non-profit, much of this is voluntary efforts. So we are fortunate enough to have found the right set of gurus to actually come on in. And everything is virtual now on the back of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we try to go virtual and try to lead these things, lessons and stuff. We started an art project, for example. We try to help out with the facilities at the temple once in a while. So number of these things are ongoing as we speak, and we have a few more ideas that we could kind of bring in. Last, and then I'll pause after this, is we've also instituted a scholarship, for example, for merit and needy kids. That currently is kind of restricted, if you will, or in a way, the only school we're supporting is a local school, the high school. So to graduating seniors, we kind of identify who's got the merit scores, if you will, and who's got also a need, and combine the two. And we diversified. It's not just about grades. It's about people who have passion for sports, for music, for theater. So we've diversified and included a few of these categories as well. That goes back to the horizontal skills we're talking about.
Yeah.
So all in all, I think it's been a fabulous journey, and I'm kind of both of us and the larger youth committee. We're looking forward to see how we can best collaborate with what you're doing, Guru.
Yeah. Thank you. We are equally even more excited to work with you. And first of all, it's a tremendous effort by you, and I really, really appreciate it. It's a highly noble cause. Just so you know, like last 1-2 minutes of your description, I heard everything positive. I mean, with so much negative stuff going around us every day, I open the news, you know what I mean? And I mean, what you're doing is, first of all, really, really amazing. And a couple of things that stand out for me is what I also try to preach to all the people, I mean, youth, is that validation of your who you are. In other words, so no matter who you are, if somebody is appreciating your services, appreciating what you can offer, that means you have something, you have a value. We call it market value in our industries. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that, there is, yeah, again, our systems do not give you opportunity to validate yourself where you are. Let's say, I'm this, I'm a good math, let's take math student, right? You have a lot of high schoolers. There are lots of math students, and probably they are A plus. I'll tell you right now, you can go and ask them, what did you do with that? In most cases, they say, I got these grades. Probably they went for some competitions here and there. Maybe they went for Olympiads. Yeah. There is one more certificate they got, acquired as part of this process. But they never, I never heard until today, oh, by the way, I used this formula to solve this problem. I never ever heard. And in fact, I was at a high school. In fact, I was jokingly asking A squared plus B squared equals C squared. How many times you studied. I remember I did from 6th standard all the way to my first year of BTech. So every year, more or less. And everybody said, yeah, where did you use? And they all said triangles and this, that, but never, I asked them, do you know where this gets used today? Is it in the construction or NASA, or I don't know, maybe somewhere else? I don't know, like transportation, whatever. Nobody knows. So then I told them, don't worry, I also don't know the answer. I also gave up. I stopped bothering about it. And so I guess the where I'm going with all this is that your opportunity of volunteering to serve somebody, whatever that may be, whether it's math skills or XYZ, whatever, you're just helping an elderly person, is the way to validate how you can help someone, is that other person is happy with your services. If the other person is not happy with your service, it doesn't matter whether you're PhD or postdoctorate, it doesn't really matter, right? So it's at the end of the day, you don't have a job, end of story. If nobody likes your service, you don't have a job, end of story. So that is also a process where you got to start and check out all your, that's also a discovery process, in my opinion, to figure out, what resonates with you. And I think what you're doing is great opportunity for these kids to learn by doing. Because, I can have a voluntary service. I can write a book and make you read and most probably they'll get A plus. But that doesn't make you really a volunteer without doing it. And so that doing part is the emphasis again with us also. So one of the other things I mentioned in the past is that mentorship, where we want these kids to mentor someone while being mentored by someone else. So you should be a mentor and mentee at any given time. And you cannot stop any one of them. And so so the conventional methods today, the moment you get into a job, implicitly you're no longer a student, you don't have to really learn anything. But and vice versa. With all due respect, your kids are I think they finished their university. The colleges, schools, with all due respect, a lot of professors and teachers, they're not being students for way too long for life reasons, right? And how many people are, at least in tech, how can they even up to date? It's impossible without working for companies. So that's why both are not there today. No mentor is mentee, and no mentee is mentor. I'm not saying that there may be one-off cases here and there, but point is that that process is not there as part of our systems. And so as a result, these youth come out of the academics without knowing what it means to be a mentor. And then they expect them to be directors and vice presidents and whatnot. And it's not going to happen. And until you figure that out, which is causing that delays or the losing time by the time you figure it out. And I'll tell you right now, with bunch of UCs, bunch of podcasts, we have over 300 plus interns. I tell them all the time. So they've been interning since their 8th grade, 9th grade, ever since they're 14, 15, and they also work on projects. I always tell them, I see that today, if I have a group of people, if I make them to go and talk about something more, more importantly is stuff they already know. Even if they don't know, it's the part of their DNA. They can walk in and they know that, okay, I can figure this out. I mean, they have that confidence built in. It's because they've been doing, ever since they're very young, and they have that built-in confidence. I can speak for myself. I didn't have that confidence when I was working, because I remember I was shaking up in front of people because I had the, stage fear, plus not having any exposure whatsoever, standing in front of people and articulating something, organizing my thoughts. None of those, didn't know anything, and I didn't know where to start. So it was a very hard learning curve for me, relatively speaking. And so I guess again, where I'm going with all this is, as I said before, you put it very succinctly, the verticals and horizontals. One of the horizontal skills has to be learned by doing. Just because and you are already, by the time you've been reading and passing exams for 10 plus years at least, so you're supposed to be reasonably good, right? And you spend enough time now, start doing few things so that we can see how effective you are, and then spend another 10 years doing that, so that by the time you get out, you're good at, and in both performing as well as quickly adapting to new things. So that leads to my next segue. Again, coming back to horizontal skills, I feel that in the recent, for the recent generation, tech skills, no matter what they want to do in life, whether they want to be in medicine or engineering or something else, or a nurse or whatever it may be, acquire tech skills. And when I say tech, it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's good if it's coding, but if not, at least understand how to, or learn the ability to learn technologies quickly, and through coding or other means. I think that's a mandatory. It's a mandatory horizontal skill that one must have. And so what's your take on that?
So, Guru, I agree with you. Let me start there. I think part of the, I guess, the inventory, if you will, of the horizontal skills, I think knowing about technology is vital. You cannot avoid it. Technology is tightly woven and integrated into the fabric of life now, whatever we choose to do. And we see the advancements now that are happening, right? So whether you look at homes now that are equipped with, let's say, cameras, to perhaps automatically sensing, depletion of resources, to alerting, all of that, to wearable devices that are in adequate use now to support and augment healthcare for patients, especially those suffering from chronic conditions or debilitating diseases. These wearable devices like the Apple Watches, the Fitbits, and so on and so forth, they are kind of keeping track now, automatically sensing and alerting healthcare professionals. So use of technology, and I'm going beyond coding also for a moment, right? But how is technology being devised? How is technology being leveraged to solve a particular business challenge? And whatever industry you might take, it could be construction, it could be, for example, healthcare, life sciences, it could be banking and financial services, it could be manufacturing, it could be, the entire airline industry. I think, and now we're talking about the launch of Artemis, and so on and so forth. And you look at the advancements that have happened.
Yep.
I think knowing about it, knowing about the applicability of technology in various use cases, I think that's a worthwhile learning for this generation for sure. And so, whether if it gets accompanied by coding, fantastic, but it doesn't have to, right? There are people who specialize, who are extremely passionate about coding. I think that part can absolutely be tackled. But again, knowing how systems are designed, how are systems being conceived, designed, implemented, if you will, to support solving a business problem for a vertical industry or any vertical industry as a horizontal skill, that's vital. And then it depends upon the youth getting into a particular field, and then by the time they would be absolutely primed for saying, hey, I went through this experience. And so in the real world, these are the challenges that the industry is facing. These are the trends that are evolving. How can I support with my vertical subject knowledge coupled with my horizontal skills that will make me a more adequate or a more appropriate resource to contribute, if you will, to the outcomes? I think that's very valuable. Good.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. I mean, you put it very nicely. So I guess, I mean, I go one step above. So I guess one of the problems that, future generation might face even worse than us. For instance, if you take right now, if you go to a nurse or somebody who's outside of the technology, hey, why don't you use blockchain, or why don't you, adapt to AI techniques for your professional development? The moment you bring any of these terminology, and they think, oh, I'm technically I'm very challenged. This is all tech stuff. I have no idea what. So in other words, that mental block is the biggest concern. In other words, especially if you're completely stay away from it, as you said, coding is one of the windows. You can potentially, you need the ability of tomorrow. There will be something else, like right now blockchain, there will be blah blah, right? People are going to Mars, and God knows what. Something is going to come up. There is always going to be something new. When something comes up, are you equipped to just Google it and make sense of it, and adapt to it, or use those for your own career, whatever the path you took, or something else in life? If you are there, you're fine. If you're not there, just like the example I gave, where, oh my goodness, I don't know. I mean, there are people of our generation, people, they just don't know how to use WhatsApp today. I mean, and if you are in that situation, I think that's going to be more dangerous than what it is today for the future generation. That's why it's better to adapt. So, I mean, this is like a speaking, natural language, like English. Just be in it, whether you use coding down the road or not. Start with coding and learn some of these domains, I call it, as like AI, ML, all these. And then, understand the use cases. It could be life science, whatever it is. If you know all three, you're going to be fine. And it doesn't matter. If you know at least 2 out of 3, which includes technology, then you can figure out the third one easily. But if you had to figure out the third one, which happen to be technology, it can be challenging because it's a fast moving, and it's just crazy, and within no time you'll become illiterate, literally. And so that's the danger we don't want you to be in. That's why I constantly preach to both the parents and students. I'll tell you why I mention this to parents, because many times parents, some of them, they say, oh, my son or my daughter doesn't want to be in coding. Or I tell them, it's not about coding. It's about knowing these things, even if they don't know. It's like, for instance, if kid says, I don't like math, you're not gonna take him out of school, right? You're gonna continue doing it, because so you figure it out, and hopefully you'll get enough score to get up. So you don't even have to get the score here. Just be in it, and over a period of time, it comes handy. And so So that's my, typically, I mean, that's how, one of the views we had as part of our mission in Silicon Valley for you, to not only bring technical skills, to bring that Silicon Valley, or make it accessible to people from all over the world, and then take them to different verticals of their interest. So speaking of that, now that you are expert in uh, pharmaceutical industry and life sciences. So I know we spoke about that briefly some time back. Can you talk more about it? What would you suggest for upcoming youth in terms of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we may fall short of time for this
I
podcast,
know.
but I'd love to continue. But here's the thing, right? I think the world of clinical research, which is where pharmaceutical companies are investing heavily and coming up with novel, safe, and effective and affordable therapies for curing diseases, right? That's has obviously been going on for a long time. And much of this process, in fact, all of it is highly regulated, right? And so, as pharma is doing the research, what is becoming even more critical is what's happening in the real world area. That's becoming of significant importance now to everybody involved in the healthcare ecosystem. There is, of course, a prime mandate to reduce, for example, the overall cost of healthcare, right? The percentage spent in healthcare vis-a-vis the GDP, if you look at it, that's significantly high. Yes, human beings do, of course, get inflicted with diseases. How effective how effective can the therapies be and how affordable they can be, if you will. It depends on a thorough understanding of what happens in the real world area. What do I mean by that? We as patients, or as human beings, I should say, the understanding of, for example, our genotype and phenotype. What do I mean by that? There is now a solid understanding of the genomics, the DNA understanding of that, the cost of mapping out and understanding the genomic sequence of a human being, costs have steadily come down. Now we have biomarkers available. For certain disease conditions, we now know that in a person impacted with a certain disease, what biomarkers can we look for particularly? That entire understanding has been developed on the back of some solid programming that has occurred, because it's a vast array of billions and billions of permutations and combinations that somebody has to sift through. It's humanly impossible. So today we have a solid understanding of the human genome, number one, and biomarkers have come up with particular cancer indications and other diseases. The second thing is medication, for example. In a clinical trial, it's a controlled setting. Statistically, if we analyze a sample of patients who are taking the experimental drug, if the benefits of that outweigh the risks, the drug gets approved. But what happens in the real world is, I have not tested on every single human being, but in the real world, millions, in fact, tens of millions of patients are consuming that drug, right? Obviously, the trial statistics prove that it's safe and effective. But in the real world, my own DNA, particularly, for example, or my surroundings, the environment I live in, the quality of food, the quality of water, the quality of the air I breathe, they all have an impact, by the way. The more polluted the air around is in the water, it has an impact. So just simply consuming a medication because the benefits outweighed the risks and it got approved for a population in general doesn't mean that I'll have the same outcome or the positive impact that someone else has, by the way, right? So this entire understanding has evolved over a period of time. So what happens in real world is now carefully being studied on the back of electronic health records. We in the US are fortunate that much of our healthcare data is now digitized. It sits and resides in electronic medical records and health records. So there's a lot of technology being developed and algorithms being developed now, okay, in looking at AI, ML, NLP, structured, unstructured. Doctors write notes. There's code available now to process all those notes, for example, right? So without getting too technical, our ability to take all of this structured and unstructured data from a variety of sources to understand the 360-degree perspective or a view of a patient will allow us to treat a patient more holistically. That understanding has now set in. There's more work to be done, by the way. By no means, cancer moonshot, for example, is a target that the government has set up. It has been at it. Several companies are investing significantly to try and understand this so that we can come up with better cures and therapies to extend the life of a cancer patient. The survival rate of that has to be extended. Anyway, so to answer your question, it's a very passionate topic,
Yeah.
but through use of variables, through the use of technology, processing structured and unstructured data, the understanding of the human genome, all of these are being factored now in designing better clinical trials and also how to extend better care to patients in the real world scenario. Extremely exciting.
Fantastic. So as I said before, we are going to do a podcast just on this topic. And so I'm not an expert. I obviously have to learn quite a bit. In fact, we did a small project, DNA analysis. It's on our SWAT cloud by our students. I don't know how much relevance it has with anything you said. I don't think probably not. We took some bunch of data and then we convert from DNA to RNA. That's the extent of, I forgot beyond that, whatever they did. We have a demo there. But we do encourage people to get into the fields that they are interested in. And essentially we bring that framework of ML and all that. So this is fascinating, and obviously more and more important than anything else we can talk about. And so let's wrap it up with one last question. Now that we are equally, or as I said before, we are more excited to work with you, let's just talk about our collaboration that we are planning on doing in the future, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely, Guru. So I'm very excited to explore an opportunity for this collaboration. As I said, I think we have a nice database of a significant number, I would say, and that number is only growing on a daily basis. What can we bring in terms of our perspectives that we discussed during this podcast today, and all the hard work that you have been doing, and your mission to kind of make these profiles of the youth, catch them young, allow a profile to be created that is more holistic than ever before, will equip these youth to become perfect citizens of the future. If you look at it like that, I'm looking for a collaboration where, for example, can we kind of really deliver some webinars to kind of bring them up to speed? Can we open up some podcasts with community leaders and people who have been successful, right? And it's almost like sending a message saying, hey, these people could be successful, and they all began with humble beginnings, if you will, which is the truth in most instances.
Absolutely.
And the journey, right? So why not me? I think if we can inculcate that element of passion and wake the spirit up, if you will, through a collaboration, I'm really excited, looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Likewise, and as I said, we will do a lot of podcasts. I think we talked about that briefly yesterday. So as I said, we can do weekly with all the community leaders that you have. I'm pretty sure. I mean, in a nutshell, what I like to say is that, for instance, take your case, coming from where you were, and then IIT Madras, and then coming to US, and then building a bunch of companies and doing all these. If somebody has to do all that, it's not easy. Number one, there are a lot of obstacles you had to go through, and what not to do right now very clearly, and which probably they don't know. I guarantee you, if you package that and bring it to them through these podcasts, the value we are giving to them is priceless. You can't put a tag to it. It's not a course where you pay blah, blah dollars. So bottom line is, and so that at the end of the day, with this, few lines here, few lines there, with this content, they can take advantage and accelerate their careers and not do those things that we have done, and at least, and so that they can do better mistakes than the mistakes we made. They're going to do a few more mistakes. Hopefully they're better than the ones we did. And then, so that's how the cycle evolves. And so it's kind of a pipeline, right? So we sort of empower these guys to be confident and be more like mentors, as I said before, to educate the following generation. It's like a setting of the pipeline. It's so that you can connect with the people easily. So that's another thing I always say, that it's very important to whether it's for mentorship or otherwise, it's very important to develop the ability to connect. So once you connect, then a lot of things fall in place. Many times things don't fall in place because you haven't established that connection yet, or you are not even trying in some cases. So all those things, hopefully, they learn early on, so that they can take advantage of the healthy years they have, and before they, fall into the old category, so to speak. So this is it's my privilege speaking to you. This is wonderful. And as I said, we'll do just one-on-one like this, few more podcasts, and also we do with other community folks as well. And thank you very much for your time. And also, I really appreciate you and your wife for the services you are providing to the youth.
Guru, thank you for the opportunity. I think I'm actually looking forward to, along with, of course, my wife, the larger youth committee at the temple, to see how we can best harness the power, intellect, and energy, passion of our youth to really prepare them for the future. So thank you for the opportunity. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.